This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcasting Network. My name is Josh Strickland. I am your host today here on this Tuesday edition of the show. I am actually recording this on a Tuesday because some unforeseen circumstances put me away from my recording equipment for Monday. So here we are. I'm recording this super late, but there's some stories that actually happened Tuesday morning to this morning that I'm going to be discussing. So that's nice. So here's how the show is going to stack up here today. We're going to be talking about Cam Newton getting released by the Panthers. It was kind of known it was going to happen, but it's officially happened. The NFL draft could be canceled. What would the price that the NFL would have to be paying, or the price that Las Vegas would have to pay for the draft getting canceled? We'll also talk about XFL stars finding their NFL homes after having some successful seasons in the XFL. The topic 5, we'll talk about the NBA. I just found an article that said how would the NBA look if it restarted, if we actually started the season in 2 months or something like that. And then topic 6, our random sport of the day, we'll talk about Medieval MMA, which is something that you just have to watch to believe, to be honest. But let's get into it. Let's talk about our first topic today, which is the Olympics. The Tokyo Olympics in Tokyo, Japan. They are going to be postponed until 2021, next summer. So this is kind of unprecedented. The Olympics, of course, all have been postponed and have been canceled before, but most of the time it's because of, a world war. So it's kind of unprecedented that the Olympics will get postponed. But if you recall, this is actually one of the first topics involving the coronavirus that I actually ever talked about, I discussed, because this was back in February, I think early February, where the Olympic Committee was thinking about, hey, we should start talking about our options here, because that's when the coronavirus is huge in China, and it was kind of spreading to South Korea and Japan. So they were thinking, it's like, hey, look, if this doesn't trend down worldwide, then we need to figure something out here. So now, here we are in March 24th, which, by the way, March is almost over. It's been crazy. So you're flying by, even though the craziest things are happening. So this morning they announced, the IOC chair, Dick Pound, which is a very unfortunate name, they announced that they are going to postpone the Olympics to 2021, which I was very interested in how that would work, because people were saying they should postpone it to the winter or to the fall, just kind of push it back a little bit. People were saying they should cancel it just altogether, which then would Tokyo get 2024, because I feel like that would be unfair, because they built all of these new facilities, and them not getting any Olympics would kind of be just a huge hit to their economy, just because they spent, because I don't know if a lot of people know this, when you host the Olympics, you spend a lot of money to get all of the amenities and the Olympic Village and hotels and and the new stadiums and stuff like that. You spend a lot of money getting those together, and then when you host the Olympics, you have a meh chance at getting that money back, but most of the time you're not going to get most of that money back. So now, if you just completely don't have the Olympics, then you're kind of screwed, and that especially goes for countries who don't properly use these facilities after the Olympics are over. So, for instance, a good example of using your facilities after the Olympics are over, Atlanta is a good example. So, Atlanta, they used Turner Field, turned Turner Field into the Braves Stadium. They have Olympic Park, which is still around and is a great park to go to. And Atlanta used all their facilities for good. I mean, they still use a lot of them today. Now, Turner Field is now Georgia State football field. football stadium, which, I mean, it's still being used, but most of the amenities and stuff like that was built for the Olympics in Atlanta are still being used. Same for Los Angeles. A lot of the facilities built for the Los Angeles Olympics are still being used to this day. So some countries, not as good. I know in Beijing, they still use that huge stadium that they did the opening ceremonies in, but I've seen some pictures of a lot of their facilities are just kind of abandoned, rotting. They have stuff growing out everywhere. So, I mean, it is a real problem. I'm pretty sure Japan, they're pretty efficient, and there's also just not a lot of land in Tokyo in general. So I'm pretty sure Japan would be on top of that and on being efficient with it. But you're not going to recoup any of that cost if you just completely cancel the Olympics. So Olympics getting moved to 2021. And this is, of course, this was the precursor to this was the Canadian Olympic team backed out yesterday. This all kind of happened really fast. So the Canadian Olympic team backed out. I don't think America officially backed out, but I think the U.S. track and field team and the U.S. swimming team were saying, no, we're not going. That's absurd. So I don't know if the full Olympic team for America backed out. So there it is. So Rosie McGlennon, who's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, said this. She says, now is not the time to be focused on high performance sport. Now is the time to be focused on what's going on in the health of the country. She was the leading voice in the Canadian Olympic Committee's decision to become the first nation to announce that it will not participate in the Summer Olympics if they continued as planned in July. Short time after that, they made the announcement. Australia took the same position. Both calls were made amid growing pressure on the International Olympic Committee to postpone the games. Brazil, Slovenia, Norway have all requested that the Olympic dates be moved. USA Track and Field and USA Swimming sent letters to the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee asking that they also push for the postponement. So yeah, a lot of people were pushing for this. McGlennon went on and said, all of us were grateful that the cancellation wasn't on the table and the IOC was committed to making the games happen at some point. But I think we were disappointed in the lack of clarity, and I think it became clear at that point that the COC needed to take a leadership position and help athletes gain some stability and reassurance that we as a country are prioritizing the health and wellness of the country. So Dick Pound, who's the IOC board member since 1978, he's been a part of a lot of different things. He's been a part of getting Russia out. He was a big part of Russia getting banned from the Olympics, and he's also a big part in Lance Armstrong getting busted. So he's been part of some big stories in international sports recently. So he said, I think people misunderstood. They think that the IOC hasn't decided and they won't decide for another 4 weeks. The IOC has decided, says Pound. What they are trying to do is come forward on a very fast basis when you consider all the moving parts here with the plan for the postponement, which I think is likely to be a year rather than a few months because this pandemic is still out of control. So there you have it. Olympics getting postponed to 2021. Hopefully this all blows over by 2021. Because the Olympics are always a fun thing to watch, whether it just be the random sports like water polo or handball or stuff like that. Handball, by the way, I think should be the next big sport in America, I think, because handball's really exciting to watch. But swimming, track and field, this is really the only time those sports get to actually be in the spotlight, because you don't really think about track and field or swimming unless it's an Olympic year, which is unfortunate for them. But I mean, that's just kind of how it shakes out. So the Olympics, always a big time event. I know Tokyo was excited about it. Baseball was going to be baseball and softball were going to be part of the Olympics again, which I was excited about. The World Baseball Classic. So now I think next year you'll have the World Baseball Classic and the Olympics next year, which will be pretty interesting. I'm not sure how the MLB will handle that, because I know the MLB is not a big fan of all their big stars going off and playing in the international competitions during their season. So it's going to be interesting to see how the MLB kind of navigates around that. But it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be weird. So, and there's still a lot of questions. Does that mean the 2024 Olympics go on as planned? Or do we shift it to 2025 and then we lose this, we kind of shift the every 4 years thing? Or do we just kind of try to stay on track and go 2024, whoever has it in 2024? I'm not 100% positive who has it. But do we go straight to 2024, have another Olympics, and then stay normal from there? Or should we move that Olympics back as well to 2025? These are just random questions. They're not that important at the moment, but they are things we need to think of, especially when all of this is coming up. So when we come back, we'll be talking about the biggest story in the NFL at the moment, and that is Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers when we return.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So, the Carolina Panthers have been kind of weird lately. They currently, well, they don't anymore, but they've used, before this morning, they had 5 quarterbacks on their roster. Then, so, for instance, they signed Teddy Bridgewater. So let me start from the beginning. The big issue throughout the whole offseason was Cam Newton. Will Cam Newton come back? Will Cam Newton be healthy enough to play? Will the Panthers try to trade Cam Newton? Yada, yada, yada. So that was the big thing. Matt Rule came in. Matt Rule said he would love to work with Cam Newton. Joe Brady gets hired. He said he would love to work with Cam Newton. But the main issue is Cam Newton. He sat out all of 2018 with a shoulder injury, and he sat out all of 2019 with a foot injury. Is there any chance for him to be healthy for a full season? Now, he's only like 31 years old. Let's remember that. He is a former MVP. He was MVP in 2015. So it's very blurred about how everyone feels about that. But he has not played a full season in a while, so it's understandable where the discrepancy there is. The Panthers now have a new coach in Matt Rule. They have a new owner in David Tepper. So this is not the same Carolina Panthers that Cam Newton is used to, where loyalty was more of a thing. Like Ron Rivera, loyalty was the big thing with Ron Rivera. So they signed Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater played 5 games for the New Orleans Saints, won all 5, looked pretty good. It was a good game manager and all those. So they signed Teddy Bridgewater, and that pretty much put the nail in the coffin for Cam Newton. Everybody knew it's probably time to move on from Cam Newton if you're going to pay that much money for Teddy Bridgewater. So that happened. And then Kyle Allen gets traded to the Washington Redskins, which is a very interesting move because Kyle Allen wasn't very good, but Redskins, they have nothing else to really look forward to, I suppose. But for instance, this article is saying, so the Redskins acquired quarterback Kyle Allen from the Carolina Panthers for a 5th-round pick on Monday, which I think is a very good return for Kyle Allen, of all people. He was an undrafted free agent in 2018. He played 15 games, 13 starts in his 2 years at Carolina after Cam Newton struggled with injuries. Ideal candidate for the backup role in Washington, having spent 2 years in Scott Turner's system with some success, while also not being high profile enough to demand the starting job away from Dwayne Haskins. So he's a perfect backup. The Redskins got a perfect backup there. So that brings us down to 4, because you include, that brings us down to 3. You got Teddy Bridgewater, Cam Newton, Will Grier. Then, which we'll discuss this more in depth later, the Panthers picked up P.J. Walker of the Houston Roughnecks of the XFL. So now we have 4. And then this morning, Cam Newton got released. And now it's just, where is he going to go? Is anybody going to pick him up? The Panthers tried to trade him. They tried to trade him. Of course you would. He's a former MVP. Try to get what you can out of him. But the fact of the matter is, signing Teddy Bridgewater kind of ruined those chances because, I mean, if you're not going to take a chance on Cam Newton, why should other teams take a chance on Cam Newton? Now we sit here and it's looked bad. I mean, the Panthers announced that Cam Newton that they were going to work together with Cam Newton to seek a trade. Then Cam Newton responds to that on social media and says, "No, you guys are forcing me to look for a trade. You're forcing me to get traded. Don't believe the lies," and blah, blah, blah. So this seems like a very messy breakup at the moment, and I'm not really sure who the main callous is. I don't know if Matt Rule or David Tepper are the main callous here, but it's kind of a crappy situation all the way around. Cam Newton, he was drafted number 1 overall in the 2011 draft, I believe, and ever since then, I mean, he's been a fantastic quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, led them to a 15-1 season and a Super Bowl appearance in 2015, won MVP in 2015, and ever since 2015, he's kind of looked iffy, but in my opinion, he's never had a good receiving core, and he's never had a good offensive line. That was always his problem, and every year in the draft, you're sitting there thinking, oh, the Panthers are going to draft a offensive line, right? They're going to draft another offensive line. No, the Panthers focused on defense, which made sense because Ron Rivera, he's a defensive guy. The Panthers defense during this whole Cam Newton run was pretty good. That was a pretty good defense. But it seems to me David Tepper just wants to cut all ties of the old Carolina Panthers. He wants to cut the ties of all the Ron Rivera era. Anyways, it seems like David Tepper and Matt Rule, they want to kind of usher in a new era here in Carolina for the Panthers here. But at what cost? Because you kind of scorned. I mean, it reminds me of the Panthers of old, actually. You scorned Steve Smith, you scorned Julius Peppers, and then, yeah. But you're scorning one of the best quarterback in Carolina history. I mean, the only other quarterback I can even mention on the same level as Cam Newton is Jake Delhomme, and that's just because he also led the Panthers to a Super Bowl appearance, also lost in the Super Bowl. But Jake Delhomme is the closest person I can think of as one of the best quarterbacks for the Panthers. The Panthers have a terrible history in quarterbacks. Let's look it up right now. But yeah, they have a terrible history of quarterbacks. Almost as bad as if it wasn't for Cam Newton, it'd probably be as bad as the Browns. So let's look it up. So 1995, their first year, you had Kerry Collins and Frank Reich. 96, Kerry Collins. 97, Kerry Collins. 98, you have Steve Berline. 99, Steve Berline. 2000, Steve Berline. 2001, Chris Winkie. 2002, Ronnie Pete, Rainey Fasani, Chris Winkie. They all played. Then 2003, you get Jake Delhomme. Jake Delhomme takes over that starting job there. Leads them to a Super Bowl. Played in 2004, and then it was the Jake Delhomme show until 2007, when you have 4 different guys. You got Vinny Testaverde, you got David Carr, you got Matt Moore, and Jake Delhomme. Then Jake Delhomme's back on top up until 2010, when Jimmy Clausen was drafted by the Carolina Panthers. Jimmy Clausen was so bad that the Carolina Panthers got Cam Newton with the number 1 pick. Now, 2018, Cam Newton did play 14 games. 2019, he only played 2. Got injured in like the second game, I believe. But the Panthers don't have that quarterback history, a very good quarterback history here, and Cam Newton is easily the best quarterback out of all the ones I just mentioned. So they're kind of scorning him. So, but where is he going to go now? I've mentioned this a lot of times. The Chargers, their position's still open. He could go to the Dolphins. Maybe go to the Dolphins. The Patriots, still looking for a quarterback, although the Patriots signed Brian Hoyer the Destroyer. So that avenue might be closed up there. But, I mean, he's going to sign with a team for very cheap. A very cheap contract. I mean, you could see I don't know. I really don't know where he could go. At the moment, we have a lot of quarterbacks still available. You got Jameis Winston, you got Cam Newton, you got Andy Dalton, who's technically still with the Bengals, but he's definitely going to get traded or shipped out some way or some form. So we still have a lot of quarterbacks out on the market, and we don't really have a lot of spots. Now, Cam Newton to the Raiders could be a thing. The Raiders could ship Derek Carr out and get Cam Newton, and that would be a very interesting dynamic there. That would be a very interesting team over there. I'm not sure if Gruden will go for that, but yeah, so it was obvious that the Panthers could not trade Cam Newton, and the reason they could not trade Cam Newton was because, guess what? If you don't want him, why should we want him? Like, if you don't think he can play, why should we think he could play? So, it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what is next for Cam Newton. I mean, I'm sure he'll get signed somewhere for cheap. It just depends on where and when. But the Carolina Panthers, they seem to be on this new, I mean, David Tepper, he's been on this new, he's not taking any mediocrity. But guess what? You're probably going to suck this year. Just letting you know, you had 5 quarterbacks on your roster at one point, and I mean, you shipped 2 of them out recently, but you still have 3 quarterbacks on your roster, and that defense, it's not looking too hot. But when we return, we'll talk about the NFL draft. It could get canceled. What would that mean for the NFL and Las Vegas?
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So, one of the things that the NFL has mentioned is that, so far, the NFL has announced that the NFL draft will still go on, just the outside events where like the Fan Fest and stuff like that would not be available, but we're still going to go on with the NFL draft as planned, either it be in a TV studio or something like that, but it'll still be in Las Vegas, I've heard. So, read this article by Bill Shea on The Athletic, talking about the cost of losing NFL draft, part of a price paid by Las Vegas in pandemic lockdown. So, I'm just going to go through this article real quick. So the NFL was going to debut its arrival in Las Vegas with one of pro football's most beloved traditions, fans booing Commissioner Roger Goodell during the annual draft. But because Las Vegas, now the new home of the Raiders, is on a coronavirus pandemic lockdown, there will be no public draft events. The league canceled the spectacle it had planned in Las Vegas and reportedly opted to make the draft a TV studio affair, which is going to be very weird just in general. But the league's decision was followed by casino owners opting to darken their gambling halls, and by Nevada Governor Steve Sisolak on March 17th ordered a 30-day closure of all non-essential businesses, including all the casinos and the city's 150,000 hotel rooms. That's a lot. That's a crap ton. But it will be the first time since John F. Kennedy's funeral on November 25th, 1963, that the city will close all of its casinos. Hundreds and thousands of hospitality industry workers have been idled, and the potential financial losses are estimated in the billions of dollars for what was among the nation's top tourism destinations. But what does this mean? What is the loss of the draft mean for the Las Vegas NFL relationship? Because originally this was so you can introduce the NFL to the city, try to get people interested in the new Las Vegas Raiders. You have that new stadium that just got built. It was kind of to bring new people in, bring people in Las Vegas who probably never cared about the NFL, and now they have a team to cheer for. Maybe they'll now cheer for, or it's fans of current NFL teams, and now they get to cheer for a new team that's actually in the city that they live in. So observers say at this point it's largely symbolic because the COVID-19 lockdowns have created a much larger financial crisis, and maybe it wasn't ever much more than branding, really. The NFL draft was to be the coming out party for Las Vegas and the NFL, the final symbol that the league has embraced the city, says David Schwartz, a professor and gaming historian at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Losing the draft means that opportunity is gone. If the fall season starts as scheduled, the first official NFL event will be a game on opening day. That is a big milestone, but it won't have the same impact as a league-wide event such as the NFL Draft. The NFL, for most of its history, regarded Las Vegas with fear and loathing. The taint of illicit gambling that harmed baseball was something that NFL wanted no part of, but those concerns have largely evaporated as casino gambling was professionalized by major corporations, and as America overall became more publicly comfortable with sports wagering and activity. More and more states have legalized since the U.S. Supreme Court knocked down the federal sports gambling prohibition 2 years ago. So, that led all of the major leagues and broadcasters to seek out formal relationships with betting companies as official data and stats providers. The NFL has such a deal with Caesars Entertainment Corp as a casino partner, but the relationship doesn't include sports gambling because the NFL is still very against sports gambling at this moment in time. In 2016, Las Vegas made its formal entry into the ranks of major league cities when it was awarded the NHL expansion team. And the Raiders announced that they relocate from Oakland to what is now a $1.8 billion Allegiant Stadium. The NFL in 2018 awarded Las Vegas the 2020 draft. The annual event has become the NFL's marquee offseason TV extravaganza with live coverage from 3 networks and has rotated to different cities in recent years while drawing enormous numbers of visitors. So, as you know, the NFL draft has been going city to city, going to different cities, and it's been doing really well. I mean, they made it a huge spectacle. Last year in Nashville was a huge event over there in Nashville, and that's saying something because it's Nashville. They're going to Las Vegas, and like I mentioned before, it's a big step for the NFL to kind of try to grab this whole city in a way that the NHL never really got to. Although Las Vegas fell in love with the Golden Knights, mostly because they went straight to the Stanley Cup Finals and almost won the Stanley Cup. But anyways, how much money isn't generated for Las Vegas? The NFL and the Raiders, because of the draft cancellation, may never be known, but at least with much certainty, those most likely hurt by its cancellation are the hourly workers at casinos, hotels, bars, restaurants, shops, and strip clubs. I think everyone who works for them is affected. Anytime you cancel something of that magnitude, a lot of hourly and tip-dependent workers are going to feel it, Schwartz said. Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority said it wasn't going to calculate the financial activity from the draft until afterwards. Lori Nelson Kraft, Senior Vice President of Communication and Government Affairs, said this via email. We did not produce an anticipated economic impact report in advance of the draft. As we typically do for large citywide events, we plan to implement proper research tools to track attendance and direct and indirect economic benefits and produce it after the event concluded to truly capture accurate data. So such events typically gin up millions of dollars in fresh spending for a host city. The NFL and Nashville Convention and Visitors Corp said that last year's draft in Nashville attracted 600,000 visitors, which that's crazy just in itself. That contributed $133 million in direct spending as part of an overall $224 million in economic activity related to the event. That's a lot of money. Just letting you know. That's a lot of money. Economically, the draft was going to bring a lot of people to town and focus a lot of the media attention there. But that is gone now. Any economic impact from that loss is dwarfed by the larger consequences of the shutdown, Schwartz said. The lockdown is predicted to cost Nevada's tourism industry $1.3 billion in monthly wages for 320,000 workers, according to Nevada Resort Association. The total economic loss would be nearly $40 billion, not $4 billion, for a closure lasting up to 90 days. The city, of course, with its flamboyant parade of casinos on famed Las Vegas Boulevard, known as the Strip, and older gambling dens on Fremont Street, exist almost entirely for tourism. Las Vegas had 42.9 million visitors last year, according to LVCVA data. When it began tracking in 1970, it was a 6.7 million annual visitors and 25,000 hotel rooms. So they went from 6.7 million visitors to 42.9 since 1970, which is crazy. So really what I'm getting from this is that the NFL draft wasn't really going to impact anything that much in Las Vegas economically. It would have been a very cool event for local people to go to, or people visiting Las Vegas to go to. It would have been a cool event to take part in, but in the grand scheme of things, Las Vegas gets so many visitors per year that 600,000, that seems like not a lot. If you take 600,000 visitors away from Las Vegas, from these numbers that I just read off, it's still 42.3 million visitors, which is still a lot. So basically what I'm getting from this is that the NFL would like to think that they're a bigger thing than this is suggesting, but Las Vegas is a complete new beast. Las Vegas is one of the biggest tourist attractions in America, period. It's up there with New York City. I mean, people want to go visit Las Vegas just to say they visited Las Vegas. I mean, it's just one of those things. I've never been to Las Vegas. I would love to go, but obviously not right now, but I would love to go to Las Vegas at some point. But the NFL draft was not going to have a lot of impact on economically for the city of Las Vegas. It was not going to have a lot of impact on visitors in Las Vegas, because Las Vegas gets a lot of visitors in general, but because of the coronavirus and because of all of COVID-19 and all that's going on, they are shut down. All the casinos are closed. There is nothing to do in Las Vegas. So the economic impact of the NFL draft is not really going to hit Las Vegas, but the economic impact of everything else closing is going to hit Las Vegas pretty hard. So this article's long, man. But anyways, it's a missed opportunity by the NFL, because you're missing an opportunity to kind of sink your teeth into this new market. It's a missed opportunity by Vegas because they get more publicity, I guess. But at the end of the day, it does not make that big of a difference for the city of Las Vegas economically or visiting wise, because they already have so much of that. The real damage is going to be from everything else shutting down. So when we return, we'll talk about XFL stars finding new NFL teams, which, of course, I gotta talk about it. Of course I do. When we return.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So, of course, one of the many many disasters that has happened since the coronavirus has been taking place and kind of spreading across the whole country. One of the unfortunate things is we are day 13 here in no sports land. And I mean, NFL free agency has kind of saved me so far, but that's kind of running dry. But there is some free agency that nobody really expected to talk about, but we're going to talk about it now. And I think one of the biggest tragedies of the coronavirus is that we had to cancel. I mean, sports-wise, there's a lot of bigger tragedies non-sports-wise. But one of the biggest tragedies sports-wise of the coronavirus is that the XFL canceled the rest of its season. They just finished week 5. They were halfway through the season. They were originally just going to play with no fans, but then they just decided to cancel the whole season. But we were at the point where, I mean, people were starting to get into it. People were really having a lot of fun. People were learning the players and stuff like that. So it's very unfortunate that the XFL had to close its doors for the rest of the season. Now, they will be back next year. They will have a second season, which is good. I think we can all agree is good. I mean, I can't wait to talk about it. They will have a second season, but what now? We have free agency. The XFL released all their players, said you can go look for free agency. If you don't find any luck there, you can come back to the team you were part of, and we'll go from there. So, NFL teams have been looking for some new blood, or old blood, depending on who you're talking about. And of course, we have to talk about the possible XFL MVP. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and award him the XFL MVP, because he led in every passing category, and his team was 5-0, and they were clearly the best team out there. So, PJ Walker. So, PJ Walker got signed. He agreed to terms with the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers, as we discussed 2 segments ago, they got rid of Cam Newton, they got rid of Kyle Allen, they got Teddy Bridgewater, and now they're picking up PJ Walker. So now the 3 deep for the Carolina Panthers at the moment is Teddy Bridgewater, PJ Walker, and Will Grier, which is interesting. I mean, Will Grier could be out of there soon, but I don't know. But this move reunites Walker with Matt Rule. So Matt Rule was PJ Walker's coach at Temple, where Temple had, he was a really good quarterback for Temple. He made a lot of mistakes, but he was a very good quarterback under Matt Rule's system, Matt Rule's coaching and stuff like that. So that was soon followed by more quarterback-related news. The Panthers traded Kyle Allen after they picked up PJ Walker. That left Walker and Will Grier to battle for the backup job behind Teddy Bridgewater. So Walker missed all of the goodwill on social media. He spent most of the day accepting congratulations from friends and preparing his move to Charlotte from Elizabeth, New Jersey, where he's been staying at his parents' house since the XFL suspended its season and eventually canceled it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see it, Walker said. I've been on the phone pretty much most of the day. It's exciting to have fan base support, though. Walker will arrive in Charlotte as something of an XFL folk hero. After spending 2 seasons shuffling on and off of Indianapolis practice squad, Walker landed in the XFL after former Colts quarterback Andrew Luck told his dad, Oliver Luck, XFL commissioner, he should look at the athletic 5'11", 212-pound quarterback. Oliver Luck listened, and Walker took it from there and completed 65% of his passes for 1,338 yards and 15 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, and leading the Houston Roughnecks to a 5-0 record. At the end of a long, exciting day, Walker spoke to The Athletic about his background with Rule, his familiarity with Charlotte and Bridgewater, his Patrick Mahomes moments, and his plans for working out and staying safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is now more of an interview. I'm just going to read it off for you because, I mean, it is pretty interesting. First question was, where have you been living? He said New Jersey, where he's been staying with his parents. He says his girlfriend stays in Southwest Charlotte, so he's traveling back down to Charlotte. So he was asked, take me through the past couple of days. Has your agent been hitting you up since the XFL said players could sign with NFL teams? He said, yeah, pretty much. We've been back and forth, had a lot of discussions with everything, going back and forth about the whole process. Did you have other teams reach out? He mentioned that he got a lot of contact with Seattle, which, I mean, he would be a great backup for Russell Wilson, but Seattle and a little bit of Arizona. What set Carolina apart? He said, me knowing Matt Rule, the coach, just the opportunity to get on the field and compete. So it's going to be very interesting because will we have there's a real competition here between Teddy Bridgewater and PJ Walker. PJ Walker, he's familiar with Matt Rule and everything Matt Rule stands for, so Matt Rule already has, kind of a liking towards him, and if he plays at least decently during the preseason, then we could have a real quarterback battle here between Teddy Bridgewater and PJ Walker, which is a very... That's a quarterback battle I didn't think I would be talking about, but that is a potential quarterback battle. So I think the Carolina Panthers are nowhere near out of the woods yet with their quarterback issues. I mean, PJ Walker actually adds some more intrigue to it. And then, of course, you have the rumors that they could be tanking for Trevor Lawrence, but, we'll get to that. So what did he tell you about Joe Brady's offense? Did you know much about it previously? He said, I'm learning about it on the fly, but I just remember watching LSU games this season. They were putting up a lot of points, throwing the ball down the field. So that excitement in the offense, knowing big plays are going to happen, looking forward to it. You were almost legendary in the XFL as the season was going on. Did you think you were going to play your way back in the NFL? He said, that's the mindset I went out there with each week. Went out there to compete at a high level. I had a purpose. I knew where I wanted to be in the end goal, but I just knew it had to take a lot of discipline and a lot of hard work to conquer that mission as well. So, then... let's see. Do you come to Charlotte with that mindset, or are you focused on trying to win the number 2 job behind Teddy? Right now, I'm just going in there to try to compete for the number 2 job behind Teddy and see what happens there. Do you know Teddy at all? I don't know him, but I'm looking forward to getting to know him. I played against him when I was in college, my freshman year. It was his last year. I played against him at Temple. Bridgewater threw for 348 yards in Louisville's 30-7 win. So it's definitely a memory from a while I was there, especially being one of my first games. Do you have a personal background, Cam Newton? He says he doesn't. Is it weird coming to Carolina with you and Teddy now the future quarterback position, which for so long was Cam's role? He said absolutely. What did Matt say to you during the process that got you excited about Carolina? Him just knowing me as a player. He knows what he's going to get out of me. I know he's going to push me to the level that he needs. It's going to help. It's going to benefit in the long run. So I'm looking forward to it, and he was excited just to give me the opportunity to come here and be part of an organization. So as you could tell, I mean, he's got a relationship with Matt Rule. It's going to kind of complicate things with Teddy Bridgewater, as I've already mentioned. So it's going to be very interesting, but there is another signing that happened yesterday. It's not as high profile because there's no way this guy's going to play, but the Kansas City Chiefs signed Jordan Ta'amu, the quarterback for the St. Louis Battlehawks. He was the second best quarterback in the league. He was very efficient. He had very high completion rates. He didn't have a lot of yards. They had mostly a running attack, but the Chiefs signed him on to be the backup to Patrick Mahomes, which is not a terrible move, in my opinion, because if Patrick Mahomes, God forbid, gets injured, then you have a very reliable guy who will have a high completion rate and will be a good game manager for when you no longer have Patrick Mahomes. So I think that's a good move as well. But it is exciting seeing all these XFL guys starting to get signed everywhere. It's kind of legitimizing the XFL as a route to the NFL. So a lot of people are going to be interested in that. A lot of people, I think it's going to make people more interested in the XFL in general, because now you have these guys that are moving to the next level. So now you can watch the XFL and be like, hey, that guy could be the future blah, blah, blah of my team. You never know. So that's exciting. I think that's going to bring more people into the XFL. The XFL's next season, I mean, you're not going to have PJ Walker, but that makes room for another quarterback to make way and become a star. And you never know. PJ Walker could unfortunately get cut, or Jordan Ta'amu can get cut, and they can come back to their teams. So there you have it. I mean, XFL getting some legitimacy here this week with PJ Walker, the league MVP, getting signed on to, be a backup, presumably, but he has a chance to fight for that starting job against Teddy Bridgewater, especially since the coach definitely knows him more than he knows Teddy Bridgewater. So when we come back, we'll talk about the NBA coming back. What would happen if the NBA restarted the NBA season Could it work? How would the playoffs work? We'll find out when we come back.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
So there are two leagues that are currently in the middle of their seasons, but they got suspended because of the coronavirus, and that is the NBA and that is the NHL. A lot of questions have been asked, like what's going to happen if they come back? Are we just going to push the season back and just kind of are we just going to play the games as normal and just push the season back? Or are we just going to kind of have like a couple warm-up games and then go straight into the playoffs? I mean, there are some questions that need to be answered here about it, but we're going to move on. I found this article on The Athletic. I know I use The Athletic a lot, but The Athletic is really good. You should subscribe to it. We're not sponsored, but I'm just saying it's a very good sports it's a very good website to read on sports. This is by John Hollinger, and this is his pods, play-ins, and playoffs, how a restart in NBA season could work. So, 80 days. Let's start there. From restart to the final playoff game. That's probably how much time the NBA needs to restart and finish some semblance of a legitimate season that we would find recognizable. While the league is on hiatus and remains so for the foreseeable future, the glimmer of hope way, way off in the distance is that quick. Reliable coronavirus testing allows the league to restart in some way at some point later this spring. If so, the NBA needs to figure out a plan for how that might work. Restarting the season involves several discrete steps, and those steps present limitations in terms of how and when the league can operate a restarted season. Here's this guy's idea on how this might work. He should emphasize that this is his conjecture and not anything people in the league are telling me. First and least discussed is getting players back to their teams and having them in some kind of shape to play basketball. With players barred from using team facilities and private gyms, it's going to be very difficult for anyone to stay in peak basketball shape. Expecting these guys to ramp up from 0 to 60 will be challenging, to say the least, especially if they've been cooling their heels for 2 months now. How long should it take to restart? At the absolute barest minimum, 2 weeks. Even then, it's going to be rough viewing. Those of us who remember the sudden return to play at the 98-99 lockout already are having flashbacks of big men pushing 3 bills, laboring up and down the court. But in a situation where time is of the essence, 2 weeks might be all we have. Realistically, there would be some signaling ahead of that point in the league was getting back to work, so players could potentially get in the gym before training camp 2.0 begins. The second limitation is at the back end. How late can they go? It seems to me Labor Day, Monday, September 7th, would be about as late as a season could plausibly run before it runs into two fairly significant hurdles. One, the NFL season, which kicks off its next season on September 10th, and two, the next NBA season, which starts, in October, like late October? The NFL is obvious, but let's talk about the 2021 NBA season for a minute. The NBA typically has 100 days off, give or take, between the end of the finals and the start of the next training camp. That number could be constrained for various reasons this time around, but I can't imagine the NBA starting its next season any later than Christmas Day, which implies training camp starting 3+ weeks ahead of that. Plug in Monday, December 7th as the absolute drop-dead date to start a shortened 18 days training camp and preseason, even though a season ending on September 7th would only be 90 days of off-season. Now, that he's wet your plate. Don't get your hopes up about that start on Christmas idea. The league could easily break convention and go considerably shorter than 90 days with its off-season, given that we're in the middle of a kind of sort of off-season right now. I mean, teams are getting multiple weeks off. I mean, these players, like, there's a chance that if we come back and the Nets make the playoffs, there's a chance Kevin Durant could be playing in the playoffs. I mean, there's a chance for that. Or Kyrie Irving could be playing, and we could have a completely different Nets team, and that Nets team could actually win the championship. But that could happen. That's something that could happen. One league insider cautioned, saying we shouldn't assume next year's schedule will be necessarily changed as a result of this year, while all of us in the peanut gallery are jonesing to push the schedule back. That requires a massive undertaking from the league side at a time when it is already in the midst of another massive undertaking. The NBA could also do everything I outlined in the story and still kick off 2021 more or less on time this fall. If that's the case, however, then that Labor Day time frame becomes even more of a hard deadline for this season to end. So let's start at the end with Labor Day, working backward. There are 99 days between June 1st, the earliest date any sane person I've read can imagine things getting back to some level of quasi-normalcy, and September 7th. Fortunately, the league won't need all 99 of them to put together a somewhat credible season. But the NBA does need enough time to execute 4 phases. A training camp 2.0 period to get these guys some back in shape, a regular season period to play some games that actually count in the standings and get the players in some kind of real rhythm before the playoffs. There's 2 ways to do that, both of which take about 2 weeks. A play-in tournament, 3 to 5 days, where the league can sample a play-in concept. This also provides a small carrot to the lottery teams that returned to action besides just, hey, can you show up for a month in the middle of summer and play 5 meaningless games? They actually get to play for something too. Playoffs of 4, best of 5 series, which would take a minimum of 6 weeks to complete, and likely closer to 45 days if the finals went the full 5 games. Add all that up, it's 80 days if everything goes to plan, which nothing ever goes to plan. If the window runs longer than 80 days, you could have more toppings on your Sunday, a 7-game finals, maybe, or even a longer training camp phase, or another regular season game. It goes without saying that playing games in front of crowds is likely a pipe dream at this point, especially in the early parts of this calendar. There is an opportunity here, however, in that it could allow the league to schedule events more tightly than it would otherwise. Let's talk about playing out the rest of the regular season, for instance. There are 2 competing schools of thought on this front. Have everyone play to a certain number of games, most likely 70, given where we are in the season. Have everyone come back and play the same number of games, 5 or so, and just deal with the fact that the standings will be irregular. Either A or B would yield virtually the same number of total games. Teams had played on average 64.7 games heading into the hiatus, so we'll end up adding about 5 games per team to end at the total around 70 via either method. Plan A is neater for after the fact when stat nerds of the world can look back on the basketballreference.com and compare apples to apples with a 70-game season. It would also result in fewer thorny issues regarding the final standings. However, it's harder to implement a real time on what's likely to be extremely short notice. For instance, due to differences between teams, the league would have to jam in 7 Lakers and Spurs games, but just 3 apiece by Dallas and Atlanta. Also, even if we get everyone to 70 games, they're still going to have home road disparities. Cleveland, for instance, has already played 36 home games. You can't even that out on a 70-game schedule. And as far as balancing division and conference and strength of schedule, forget about it. Forget about it. If the league tries to do home and away games with travel in between, the complications multiply. So let's present Plan B. Give everybody exactly 5 games to play. It's fairer in terms of the schedule load on teams post-hiatus, and it's easier to schedule out. Also, I'm assuming no crowds, which means teams could play at an available arena or neutral site. Sources tell The Athletic that the league is still talking to teams about clearing arena dates in the summer, so I'm assuming this isn't going to be the league's first choice, but it does provide several heretofore unavailable options. So, the NBA could have pods play games in some random neutral city, or perhaps in an abandoned college town with a state-of-art arena. They could also bring all 30 teams to a ghost town of Las Vegas, try to bang out the whole thing there. If the league is doing my pod idea, geography makes it relatively easy to strain out 5 groups of 6 and have them meet up someplace nearby. Portland, Phoenix, Sacramento, Golden State, LA Clippers, LA Lakers, Utah, Denver, Dallas, San Antonio, Oklahoma City, Houston, Minnesota, Chicago, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Cleveland, Detroit, Memphis, New Orleans, Atlanta, Charlotte, Orlando, and Miami, and then New York, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, Washington, Toronto, and Boston. those teams could all play. So how would the playoffs work? Of course, that's kind of weird. The top 6 seeds in each conference go straight through the playoffs. 7 and 8 seeds get a double bye in the play-in tournament. The 9 seed gets a single bye in the play-in tournament. The first round of the play-in tournament pits seeds 10 and 15, 11 versus 14, and 12 versus 13 in each conference. The second round of the play-in tournament is the next day and pits seed 9 versus the 12 and 13 winner, and the other 2 winners face off. The final round pits 7 seed versus the winner of the 10, 11, 14, 15 bracket, and the 8 seed versus the winner, blah, blah, blah. Those winners make the playoffs. That's very complicated, but that's what he's suggesting. I mean, it's interesting moves. I would enjoy this a lot. It would be the most entertaining, I feel like, either way. But yeah, I mean, we're in weird times. Like he said, none of this is going to stick, because it's about the NBA and what they think is better, and so on and so forth. So we'll see how that works. When we return, we'll talk about the Medieval MMA League, which you definitely didn't know was a thing, but you need to look up right now.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and One Championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Now, so far, I have been telling you guys about random sports and stuff like that, and I mean, they've been kind of fun. Like, bandy was a fun thing. I mean, it's soccer on ice, basically. It's soccer and hockey. It's hockey get put together, and it's interesting, to say the least. But Medieval MMA. Now, I can't really I couldn't find an actual Wikipedia article on this, but I found a article from the UK about it. It's called Night Fights, the Inside the Strange and Savage World of MMA. So basically, let me give you a quick rundown of what this is. So, you know the MMA, you know UFC, you know all that fun stuff. So, they fight in a octagon, stuff like that, and you know it's kind of no holds barred. I mean, there's rules, of course, but I mean basically there's no rules. Well, Medieval MMA is all of that, but both fighters are in full suits of armor, and they have swords and shields. Swords and shields. Are you interested yet? So I found this out about a year and a half ago, because I was just bored at work, and I was like looking up random stuff, and then I found Medieval MMA, so I pulled it up on YouTube, and I was like, oh my dear God, this is a real thing. People actually do this. So, I mean, it's a thing, people. I promise you. So, taking a page from the Medieval Times book of crowd entertainment, Russian mixed martial arts promotion M1 Global began hosting Armored Knight Joust as in-between fight spectacles in 2014. The joust expanded one-on-one sword fighting, ostensibly between two trained knights knowledgeable in the ways of armored combat. These two fighters would step into the octagon barbed in plate mail and proceed to smash each other in the face with shields and swords as an official kept track of things. Seeing as violence, like fashion, is cyclical, the exhibitions became wildly popular to the point that M1 plans to devote entire events to night fights. MMAfighting.com reports that the new event is called M1 Medieval and will be underway as soon as promoters can find enough nights to fill an evening of medieval hack smashery. In any case, take a look above for footage. This article has footage, but so yeah, I mean, just imagine MMA Now add suits of armor. I'm trying to find the history of this, honestly. So, Violent News Sport League is trying to make inroads from 2017 in the Pacific Northwest. It is best described as full contact MMA-style combat in medieval armor. The swords and axes are all real. These aren't Renaissance Fair reenactors. They're only here to fight. Welcome to the Armored Combat League. Oh, man. It's a family-friendly violence. What? Family-friendly violence. The way you win is by putting the opponent in the dirt. That's Eric Sari, the Pacific Region Commander for the Armored Combat League. Sari is here from Sacramento to grow the Seattle chapter of the Armored Combat League. Right now, there's only about 5 members. I wonder why. There's a $50 membership fee to join the league, and it has 350 members worldwide. Nationwide, sorry. It is probably the most violence the average person will probably experience up close. Okay. So who would choose to put on up to 100 pounds of armor and take body blows for fun? Beat Alexa Bennett. You put that helmet on, you feel really cool, she said. Bennett is a computer science student who said she had no confidence when walked into her first practice 10 months ago. I went through a massive transformation after I started the Armored Combat League, she said. I was super overweight. I just joined in December 2016. I was 230 pounds. She went from a size 16 pants to a size 10. But she said the real transformation has been in her self-esteem. When you go out there, you're in armor. She said you're not invincible, very clearly not invincible. The armor does its job, but we still get bumps and bruises. But it gives you a whole emotional confidence level. She's one of the few women in the league, but she's used to that in the field of computer science. And she said that the men don't go easy on her in the ring. She wouldn't want that. She wouldn't want it any other way. Brendan Norsine is one of the Seattle chapter's new recruits. The Marine reservist from Monroe is getting suited up in armor for the first time. I just saw it online, and everything was really cool to me, said Norsine. History mixed in with the full contact. Yep, that's for me. Sure, dude. Whenever you say. Sean Dickinson has also found the sport on Facebook. There are certain primalness to it, right? You're just in the moment, you're doing it, and when you're done, you're really tired, Dickinson said. Of course, you're wearing a full suit of armor, but, you know. He's an 18-year veteran of the Everett Fire Department and the dad of 4 teenage boys. My kids think I'm kind of a dork. I would not think that, sir. I would think you're crazy. But anyways, Dickinson has launched a new chapter of the league in Bellingham. Right now, he's one of 2 members. While the sport looks chaotic, it is governed by rules that have their origins in the 14th century. Sari said around that time, there was a French king who wanted his knights and his soldiers to keep practicing for warfare in times of peace. He said they were having a hard time not killing each other, so they developed tournament rules, and that's where a lot of the ACL rules come from. Sari said all the athletes have jobs they need to go to on Monday morning, and the rules keep them from getting seriously injured. Still, injuries do happen. The athletes have scars to prove it. During a demo day in West Seattle, one athlete sprained his wrist when he was hit after he lost his weapon during combat. The athletes say that only proves the sport is real, and despite the pain, they're having a really good time. I'm glad. Every day in armor is a good day, said Bennett. Even a bad day in armor, you're hitting the ground, you're like, I'm in armor, it's still a good day. So, interesting. I'm going to try to find the rules for you real quick so we can figure out the rules there. Let's see. Here we go. This makes for great podcast, I know. So, with its roots tracing back to 648 BC, mixed martial arts is one of the oldest and most popular sports in the world. Adored in ancient Greece, MMA played a pivotal role in the ancient Olympic Games in Pakration, a fighting art trained by the Greek army. Warriors engaged in fierce fights. Yeah, we already know that. So... Oh, man, I don't think this has rules in it, unfortunately. but it was inspired by historical medieval battles, a sport created in Russia in the late 1990s. In historical medieval battles, battle reenactments are taken to the next level. This wasn't American dads holding fake muskets and pretending they were in the Civil War, but instead full contact warfare, which was emerged from dusty fields to sold out arenas all across Russia. Of course, Russia is part of this. God. For some purists, this is controversial, but the fighting itself is arguably less dangerous than typical MMA fight, while being a much more thrilling spectacle. Two dudes in shorts hitting each other might be fun, but add in metal, swagger, and that glorious sound of steel on steel, there is no comparison. In contrast to traditional MMA, medieval fighting is held solely on the feet, with competitors instructed to block or answer the attacks of their opponent. Sword stabbing is illegal. While the armor is 100% metal, it can weigh up to 36 kilograms. I don't know what that is off the top of my head in pounds. That is 80 pounds, in case you're wondering. Knights once fought on horses during the Middle Ages. Knight Fight, history's brand new series, takes medieval fighting to a whole new level, stepping into the world of Armored Combat League, the U.S. version of those original Russian medieval fighting divisions. Seriously, this is epic. 6 competitors come to battle in each episode, with only one knight left standing by the end. This clanging and banging metallic warfare as 2 knights from hugely different backgrounds fight for honor. Regular people become royalty, with customized era-specific armor, garb, and weaponry, all adding to the appeal. So there you have it. I can't really find the rules. There's not a lot on this. This is how random this random sport of the week of the day is. But Medieval MMA, look it up on YouTube. There are plenty of videos of it on YouTube, and it is a very interesting thing just to watch. It is a spectacle, as they say. So check it out. I don't think anybody gets hurt, but it looks dangerous as hell. So, I mean, if you want to check it out, that's all you. Thank you for listening, everybody, to this late edition of the Tuesday edition of the podcast. Thank you for listening. If you like the podcast, like, rate, and subscribe us on wherever you get your podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Strickland_Josh. And then, of course, you can follow GSMC Sports on Twitter as well, where Chris and I kind of keep up with that Twitter feed. And I'll see y'all on Thursday, and I'll try to come up with more topics to talk about, which will be very difficult. Thank you for listening, everybody. I hope you have a great day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.